Hi, welcome everybody. I'm your host today. I just got back from a trip in Jordan and Syria actually, and then I got a little jet lag and got a head cold, so bear with me.
That's
Link.
the ICUJP link tree, and it has a lot of information on this group. Not only our website, but how you can donate, how you can get a nifty little ICUJP shirt. Because now is the time to stand up and be seen as someone who, it's sad to say that it's polarizing that Interfaith Communities United for Justice and Peace can be a polarizing statement and a polarizing name. But now's the time to do it if you can. Um, and along with donating, you can do that as a one-time thing. You can do that as a monthly process. You can also find out about a lot of the great work that some of our previous presenters have done, not only some of the books that they've written, but some of the documentaries they've directed and all those kind of things. So bookmark that, please, and if you can donate, that would be great. Thank you.
I was prepared to talk to you about a very troubling Supreme Court decision this month. And then while we were getting this meeting started, up popped a second terrible decision by the US Supreme Court issued minutes ago. So to tie this all together, my simple message is that brave lawyers and brave judges are doing their job in large part. I understand over 157 temporary restraining orders and injunctions have been issued against the Trump administration in the last several months. But my message today is that litigation is necessary but not sufficient. It is going to be we the people that determine the future of this country. And just briefly, so you do have some information on this, on May 19, the US Supreme Court allowed Trump's administration to revoke the temporary protective status, the TPS status, of 350,000 Venezuelans who had been approved and protected by this program. In that case, and the court's been doing this, they issue anonymous rulings and only the dissents show up. And in that case, the only dissenter was Ketanji Brown Jackson. It was very troubling what Justices Sotomayor and Kagan, the other two liberals, were doing in that case. This disrupts those 350,000 Venezuelans, and despite Trump's trashing of immigrants, in the case of these Venezuelans, 50% hold college degrees, 95% are employed, some have American children, and again, despite his lies that these are all criminals, no one can be in the temporary protected status program if they've even committed a misdemeanor. So this is a mean-spirited, cruel policy that Trump has put into effect. Judge Edward Chen in the Northern District of California stayed that program in a lengthy opinion. The Ninth Circuit upheld that decision and refused to stay it, but the Supreme Court swept in. Today, the Supreme Court, this time with two dissenters, Justice Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, allowed a Trump program to go forward where he had suspended a Biden era, it's called a parole program, that allowed 500,000 immigrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela to temporarily live and work in the United States. These are dangerous decisions. Injunctions are meant to maintain the status quo, not to shift policy on an emergency basis. And the status quo for years has been the protection under lawful programs enforced by the U.S. State Department to protect these immigrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela under 2 different programs. That was the status quo. The Trump executive orders disrupted that status quo. The courts implemented injunctions to maintain the status quo, and the Supreme Court, by these heavy conservative votes, has sided with Trump. It really shouldn't surprise us. The Supreme Court in the last 100 days has been throwing crumbs at times on procedural matters, but I've been very suspicious of all of those cases so far, and these decisions only demonstrate why. So I end where I began. We are going to let brilliant lawyers from a whole battery of organizations and largely Democratic state attorneys general do their work. We're going to let the courts do their work. But on June 14 is No King's Day. We need the largest public protest across this country in small and large communities. Up here in Sonoma, I'm helping organize the Indivisible rallies. You can go to No King's Day in a Google search and find organizations and coalitions that are organizing. This, of course, is the day that Trump is insisting on celebrating his birthday with a dictatorship-style military parade costing millions of dollars down the streets of Washington, D.C. And while he is doing that, we need to ridicule him, we need to debase him with public demonstrations. No King's Day. So that's the test. Are we the people ready to defend and take back our democracy? Where will you be on June 14, a Saturday? Find out the rally near you and attend it proudly and demonstrate that we are not allowing this fascist government to take over. I'm very grateful to every one of you for what you do every day, and thank you for attending this program, either live or on tape.
Thank you so much, Steve. I know I'll be at a rally on that day in Santa Cruz. I volunteer, so got to be there. I want to go to the main presenter, which is, I think, Marcy. Is it?
The work in this movement matters. We don't always achieve our victories. We don't always achieve what we're after. But on this path, we meet some of the bravest, most courageous, compassionate people, and Marcy Winograd is one of them. I'm so proud to have known Marcy for decades, stood with her in her lovely home and garden, and in her run for Congress, in her tireless work now at CODEPINK and JVP. One of those people you can always count on to follow the moral path, the path of speaking truth to power. She's doing this right now, has done this seamlessly for decades. And I do hope, Marcy, you work into your remarks today on this very important topic. Some of your own personal journey, the challenges you've faced, the tenaciousness you've been able to call upon to share with our group today.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Stephen, and for keeping us in the loop on all of these court cases and how chilling it is that these liberal justices are voting with the extremists on the court, the right-wing extremists. And thank you all for inviting me back and for always showing up and your enduring commitment to social justice. I'm so proud to be among you today and grateful for what many of you and us is a lifetime of work. So with that, I'll jump into the topic, which is to focus on the Israel lobby in California. You know, with Trump's base being so much Christian evangelicals, at least 10 million, we see that influence in a lot of the red states to suppress the voices for equal rights for Palestine and Israel. But in California, it's largely the Legislative Jewish Caucus and a constellation of Zionist organizations, such as the Anti-Defamation League, Jewish Family Services, Jewish JCRC, Jewish Federation, and so forth, that are working in conjunction, I wouldn't say alongside of, but are supporting much of the agenda of the Trump administration in terms of suppressing speech, chilling speech, and conflating anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. So with that, I thought I would first give some background on the Legislative Jewish Caucus. I know some of you are familiar with this. Feel free to chime in. And I'm going to be calling on Stephen for some legal interpretations. So I'm going to do an overview of the Legislative Jewish Caucus, which is the political wing and its funding, its funding arm, and then get into some of the legislation that we're looking at today, and that being AB 715 that targets educators, and SB 472 that would increase funding for contemporary anti-Semitism education. You can imagine what that is. So with that, I'm going to share screen and I'm going to follow Rick's advice here. Yeah, good. Okay, so this is the Legislative Jewish Caucus. It got started, I think, about a decade or maybe more ago. And they, for the most part, introduced legislation to advance Israel in one way or another, to continually remind people of the Holocaust. Certainly it was, a horrible, horrible chapter in world history. It was one of many genocides. And so their focus is to really exceptionalize the Holocaust and to, I would say, weaponize it, exploit the pain and trauma that our ancestors, my extended family experienced in a concentration camp to justify the establishment or the imposition, I should say, of a supremacist state in Palestine, and that being Israel. And if you can review this at your leisure if you want. Under the About section, let's see, you'll see the co-chairs. So Scott Wiener, he represents San Francisco, and Jesse Gabriel represents the San Fernando Valley, Encino, that area. You also have other officers, Dawn Addis, she's from Morro Bay near San Luis Obispo, and Josh Becker from Atherton. And he was recently just an aside, on a webinar to back a bill called AB 1468, which the Legislative Caucus introduced, but then trashed or abandoned when it met with a lot of opposition from teachers' unions. He was on this webinar saying there was never a Palestine. There was no Palestine. There's no Palestine. And after that was posted and shared on social media, the webinar was taken down. But the reason why I want to highlight these two, Scott Wiener and Jesse Gabriel, is because they also, in addition to co-chairing the Legislative Jewish Caucus, Scott Wiener chairs the Budget Committee in the State Senate. And Jesse Gabriel chairs the Budget Committee in the State Assembly. And this is important because lawmakers, as we saw yesterday with unanimous passage of a troubling bill, lawmakers are fearful of their influence and their power over the budget. And other lawmakers who may not agree with their agenda in terms of the promotion and normalization of genocide, they will vote for their bills because they themselves want their bills funded. So they take trips to Israel and invite people on, lawmakers and electeds, sheriffs and so forth on trips to Israel. I also want to show you, bear with me here. Okay, they established this, I think, a couple of years ago. It's the California Jewish PAC to raise money for their work. Therefore, electing people who will advance the agenda of the Legislative Jewish Caucus. I call it the Legislative Israel Caucus. It certainly does not represent me. And you can look at some of the contributions. We won't spend a lot of time here, but you can just get a sense of who's contributing. And we have Amazon, $15,000. So the total they've raised in the last couple of years, I mean, it's not a stunning amount. I think, well, it may not be on this page. It's about $460,000, I think. Medical Association, so forth, SEIU. You'll see, if you go through this, you'll see a number of labor unions who are giving, charter schools, Band of Indians, San Miguel Band of Indians, Uber, Dental Association, more pharmaceutical, medical. Anyway, something to explore, see what's going on there. Okay, so recently they introduced a bill, get there, here we go, called AB 715. Here's the bill. Well, this is a summary of the bill that was composed by the Assembly Education Committee that is chaired by Al Moratsuchi from Torrance, who is running for State Superintendent of Instruction. This bill came, as I mentioned earlier, after another bill was abandoned, and that bill was AB 1468. It was opposed by the California Teachers Association, which represents 310,000 teachers across California. So very quickly or soon thereafter, they introduced this bill, AB 715, and what it says is that, as you can see, prohibits a governing board of a school district or county board of education, charter school from allowing the use of any curriculum. So that could be a song, it could be a book, it could be an article, it could be a paragraph that would subject a pupil to unlawful discrimination. Okay, but what they say in the intent of the bill is to ramp up the complaint process to make it easier to lodge anonymous complaints alleging unlawful discrimination. Changes the definition of nationality. So it also includes perceived shared ancestry or ethnic characteristics, residency in a country with a dominant religion, distinct religious identity. Changes the definition of religion for purposes of prohibitions on discrimination in public education, discrimination on the basis of religion. So, Steve, you wrote a little bit about this in your summary of the bill, and maybe you could weigh in on the legal ramifications or the questions this would raise in a larger context about changing definitions of what are considered protected classes under civil rights law.
Yes, I want to weigh in, but I'd love you to continue your description. Okay. Oh, no, particularly the anti-Semitism coordinator.
Sure.
That this bill creates, because I think that leads to some of the most dangerous aspects of this bill.
Yes. Okay, so if you read, most of the bill is listed under the intent of the legislature, and I anticipate that some of what they have listed under intent, they will try to work in as amendments. But the co-authors, Rick Zver, who represents Santa Monica, I think Beverly Hills up through Hollywood, and Don Addis, Morro Bay, San Luis Obispo, together with Jesse Gabriel and Scott Wiener, the co-chairs of the Legislative Jewish Caucus, as well as the chairs of the Black Caucus in the legislature, the AAPI caucus, and the Latino caucus. I believe they are working right now, having dialogue on the amendments that they want to write into this bill to take some of the intent into the actual legislation, because the intent is supposed to come in, as you see, subsequent legislation. So in subsequent legislation, they say they want to make sure that they strengthen what's called the Uniform Complaint Procedures, UCP, so that it's easier for people to lodge complaints, not only against teachers, but school board members. They really want to go after school board members. And that was evident in Dawn Addis's testimony a few weeks ago before the Assembly Education Committee, the one chaired by Marcy, who showed, unfortunately, tremendous bias in how he conducted that hearing in terms of cutting off opposition. 2-1, people opposed the bill. He continually cut people off, allowed proponents of the bill, many of them from the constellation of Zionist organizations I mentioned, to talk endlessly. And so they make that easier to file complaints. And LEAs, those are county offices of education. So it's also targeting them. So what do they want to do? They want, at some point, I guess I don't see it here. Let's see. They want.
The coordinator was mentioned in the intent section also.
Yeah. I may have glossed over it, but it includes, under the intent section, the plan to establish an anti-Semitism coordinator to monitor instruction throughout the state. And this is very disturbing for a number of reasons. One of which is that there is no other coordinator to monitor what instruction or what safeguards are in place to protect students, Black students, African-American students, Latino students, anyone else. And so it exceptionalizes so-called Jewish safety, which I would say would be Zionist safety. Interestingly, this is the bill here, never defines anti-Semitism, though it mentions it 5 times. And I think this is purposeful. I'm going to explain a little bit about the chicanery that's been going on with this bill, but I believe what they want to do is wait until the very last minute. Now, the bill passed the Assembly. I think it was 68-0 yesterday, 11 not voting. Those are usually people who oppose it, but they don't have the courage to oppose. This bill now goes to the Senate Education Committee, which is chaired by State Senator Perez, who I believe is from Pasadena, South Pasadena area. And from there, if it passes, it will go to the Senate Appropriations Committee. The fiscal analysis from the Assembly Appropriations Committee, chaired by Buffy Wicks of the Berkeley, Richmond, Oakland area, predicted the bill would cost well over $1 million. They really can't predict what it would cost for increased enforcement, increased litigation, more people filing complaints, But the Appropriations Committee and the Assembly also passed it unanimously and without insisting that these authors define their terms. What is anti-Semitism? Because if they had their way, I have no doubt they would define it along the lines of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance examples, which include calling Israel a racist state, you're anti-Semitic. If you say Israeli leaders are acting like Nazis, you're anti-Semitic, and you could be subject to a civil rights complaint with the State Department of Education, and you could be punished, terminated, lose your job. But we'll see. What you see here is existing law. What they took, here's how it works. I never knew this. Some of you probably are ahead of me in that regard, but the California Constitution says you cannot introduce a bill less than 30 days before its first hearing. And there's a reason for that. They want the public to have an opportunity for input and scrutiny, to submit opposition letters. So what they'll do, if they want to be sneaky, devious, they will take somebody's old bill. They have to get somebody to agree to basically sacrifice their bill that was introduced more than 30 days ago. So in this case, it was Rick Zabur. He had introduced a bill on attorney discipline. He completely gutted that. It's gone. And now it is a bill. What is the title of this bill? Educational equity discrimination. And it is, it's what I just discussed with the summary, talks about existing law. And you can see this, the red part is all of the gutted part of his previous bill. And now it includes what the bill will do, the intent, and how it would amend the education code to redefine nationality and religion. And we'll hear from more about that from Steve later. And more gutting here. So what they actually did was they didn't post the text of this new old bill until after the deadline for organizations and people to submit opposition to the Assembly Education Committee. So when lawmakers read the report from that committee, they will read no opposition. Okay. Now, what's happening with this bill? We have a coalition, Jewish Voice for Peace Action, which is the 401c3 of Jewish Voice for Peace, CARE, AROC, American Arab Resource Organizing Committee, and Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum that have come together to organize against this bill. So how could we defeat this bill when it passes? It just flies through the assembly, right? And there was a lot of advocacy against the bill, even though it wasn't officially listed. People were emailing, calling, meeting with their legislators, meeting with staff members of some of these committee chairs, and yet just flew through. And what I gleaned from these staff meetings was that, and some of the staff members, including district directors and policy analysts, was, and I heard this repeatedly, I have my own opinion. I hear what you're saying. I am going to try to meet with the representative and share this. I don't always get an opportunity, and many times the lawmakers just talk amongst themselves. Okay. Now, a question might be raised is, why would chairs of the Black Caucus, AAPI caucus, and the Latino caucus in the legislature co-author this legislation, particularly when the intent is not to protect their communities? The intent is to exceptionalize a certain segment of the Jewish community. And so I don't think it takes a leap of imagination to conclude that the reason why they signed on as co-authors is because they want to protect ethnic studies. And these co-chairs of the budget committees, the chairs of the budget committees, Weiner and Gabriel, co-chair the Legislative Jewish Caucus. They want this, and they're going to control funding for ethnic studies as much as the governor. I mean, ultimately, it's the governor, and it's not written into his budget, even though AB 101 was passed in 2021, and that stated that ethnic studies was to become a graduation requirement by 2030 and was to be offered as an optional course by this year. And our research that I've done with UC Scholars, or I haven't done it, but supported their research, suggests that most high schools in California are already offering ethnic studies courses, which can be offered in a variety of configurations across multiple disciplines. So when these ethnic studies co-chairs saw that the Legislative Jewish Caucus was going to not include funding, and they have not included funding in their proposed budget, they signed on as co-authors. All right. That is not the only bill from the Legislative Jewish Caucus. And now I don't know what my time frame is, but there's more to share. Okay,
Marcy, you've got ample time.
Okay.
Why don't you cover this bill, and then you and I can have kind of a conversation to expand on all this.
Okay, so there's a few other things, and then maybe we can expand, and if that's okay, unless you want to talk now. Okay. All right. So this is SB 472. This is a bill that is co-authored by, it doesn't really show us here. Okay, so it's sitting here It has been referred to the Committee on Appropriations, hasn't passed. What this bill would do is set up a pipeline for the state to send funds to multiple county offices of education to sponsor professional development, teacher training on Holocaust and genocide education. This is big with the Legislative Jewish Caucus. And in short, it's called HGE, Holocaust and Genocide Education. Of course, genocide scholars will say the Holocaust was not the only Holocaust, right? And that just the term itself exceptionalizes it. So Stern, that's what he wants to do. And after he testified and got his bill through the Senate Appropriations Committee, or excuse me, what did I just show you? Did it say that it had passed? I can't remember. It hasn't been signed yet. Let's put it that way. After he testified, he was approached by an amazing grassroots journalist named Ava Crescent. She's in the Marin area. I have never met anyone like her. Well, maybe some for Pacifica who have reported for Pacifica throughout the years. But she approached Henry Stern, who represents Thousand Oaks, Newbury Park, adjacent areas of Los Angeles. And he was approached about why he was pushing this bill. I'll just play a little bit of, this was a woman from Jewish Voice for Peace.
Broader effort to police U.S. education, echoing Trump-era tactics to censor teachers. SB 472's reporting requirements aim to prevent discussions about the Nakba and the ongoing genocide in Gaza. The bill's drafters have previously taken actions to erase Palestinian voices and now propose outsourcing curriculum development to a grant program that risks weaving Zionist ideology into the curriculum. We must teach history in its full truth, not politicized or weaponized. Our shared humanity depends on it. Thank you.
Okay. Part of the bill requires these county boards of county offices of education to submit annual reports on what Holocaust education they have offered, and that would be Holocaust education offered by what the governor and the legislature has established as a collaborative on Holocaust and genocide education that includes the Anti-Defamation League and its conflation of anti-Semitism, of anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. Okay, you're going to hear Ava following Stern after the hearing in the Appropriations Committee and asking tough questions.
Senator Limon will be presenting SB 584. Senator Limon, you may begin when you're ready. Thanks for we're going to tour with speak.
I'm not really interested in talking.
Okay, we just wanted to ask you.
I'm not interested.
I just wanted to ask if you deny that there's currently a genocide occurring.
Yes, I do deny that.
You deny that there's a genocide occurring?
I think you should go back to school and do your homework. You should probably go back to K-12 and learn about things. I'm sorry that you feel.
Okay, well, I don't think it's a matter of my feelings. It's a matter at the International Court of Justice. It's a matter of arrest warrants. It's a matter of arrest warrants, Senator Stern. There are arrest warrants. There are arrest warrants for Netanyahu. There are arrest warrants. There are arrest warrants for Yoav Gallant and Benjamin Netanyahu, because there's a Holocaust happening right now in Gaza. Senator Stern.
Don't worry about it.
Senator Stern.
Appreciate it.
So, Senator Stern, I'd like to get some answers.
You gotta be careful about touching though. You gotta not.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, all right.
And Senator Stern, I didn't touch you. You did touch me though. So, Senator Stern, I do have questions about why you're pushing this in the middle of a Holocaust in Gaza that is being enacted with U.S. taxpayer dollars by the state of Israel.
Yeah. Why are you teaching that the Holocaust?
Why are you denying that there's a Holocaust in Gaza right now?
Why do we want to?
Why are you denying that there's a
First of all,
Holocaust?
that's not the issue in this legislation.
Why isn't it? Because That is a genocide that Israel is
I
conducting
understand you feel
right
that
now.
way. I understand you feel.
Well,
I do appreciate that.
South Africa feels that
I
way,
know.
the global south feels that
Sure.
way.
Sure. I understand.
You understand?
I understand that they all have some misguided notions of what a genocide is, and that's why we're running this legislation to help teach them what a genocide is and what it really is not. And
Unbelievable, right? Okay, so, and there are 6 different videos in her report, and I can share that with Rick, and he can share it with you in turn if you're interested. At one point, many of the JVP activists who testified at the appropriations hearing, they talked to him in the hallway, and there was an ongoing dialogue. He wanted to engage. He wanted to combat with them. So that's also part of her report. Now, lastly, I just want to share with you, well, maybe not lastly, I don't know. This SB 1277, this was signed into law by the governor, and this establishes that teachers collaborative that I mentioned. Again, you see Stern here. He's the principal author. And this collaborative includes 14 organizations, the majority of which are Holocaust-centered. 5 are ardent Zionist organizations, including the Anti-Defamation League, Yad Vashem, and the Shoah Foundation. And they are pushing out not only Holocaust education, but also education on what they term contemporary anti-Semitism. And this is encapsulated in a curriculum called Echoes and Reflections. This Echoes and Reflections includes a video. This is the last video I want to share with you before we have a conversation, because I think it's important to see what they are teaching our students. And we have gone, Code Pink, Jewish Voice for Peace, we have testified before the Los Angeles Unified School District that governs, that oversees what, about 535,000 students or more, to get the ADL off their website and not link to them in any way, not sever their partnership with the ADL. Here's what the ADL is teaching our students.
What does it mean to be Jewish? Jewish identity revolves around feelings of religion, ethnicity, and peoplehood that are dynamic. What do I mean? Let me explain. According to biblical texts, the Jewish story begins with Abraham, who about 4,000 years ago was the first to introduce the revolutionary concept of monotheism, a belief in one God without physical form, later also accepted by Christian and Muslim. Abraham's family became the leaders of 12 tribes, the early people of Israel. Famine struck, and they left their homeland, becoming slaves in Egypt. Moses led them out and received the 10 Commandments, foundational moral laws emphasizing respect, justice, and ethical behavior. The Jewish commitment to learning and education as part of our religious and cultural traditions started here. The people of Israel eventually returned to their homeland. Jerusalem and the temples they built there became their spiritual core. Invasions of other people led to a 2,000-year exile of most of the Jews. During the exile, Jews settled worldwide, adapting to local cultures. Without one country or one language to unite them, what made them a people? Well, this is exactly where the feelings of identity that I mentioned before come in. First, there's our common religion, which can be practiced in many different ways, written in the Torah, also known as the 5 books of Moses. Our common memory, history, customs, and heritage are also key. No matter where we live, we celebrate the same holidays and have many of the same traditions. Another thing that's kept us together as a people for so long is our connection to the land of our ancestors, Israel. While there has been a continuous Jewish presence in the land of Israel, the yearning to return to our biblical homeland has been the deep and emotional heart of Jewish life throughout the 2,000 years of exile. The connection of the Jews as indigenous people in the land of Israel, as well as their experience of anti-Semitism, led to the Zionist movement. At a time of rising nationalism in Europe in the 1800s, the Jews sought to establish their own homeland. As part of the process, they even revived the dead language of Hebrew. The Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews were murdered, highlighted the urgency of creating a Jewish homeland. In 1948, the modern state of Israel was established. It became a home for Jewish refugees from post-war Europe, from Africa, and from Muslim countries that expelled Jews. For many Jews, no matter where they live or how religious they are, a strong aspect of their identity is their connection with the state of Israel, the only Jewish state in the whole world. Our love of learning and need times to struggle to survive have made Jews innovators, thinking outside the box. Wherever we live throughout the world, Jews have contributed many breakthroughs in all sectors of society. As you can see, Jewish people are diverse. We don't all look the same or speak the same language, but the traditions and religion most of us share in a personal balance, as well as our common heritage and history, make the Jews a people.
Okay. Slick, huh? Very slick. So, questions, thoughts, Stephen?
Well, let's do this. And I'm grateful that ICUJP has been covering these issues. We've had members of the liberated curriculum here to speak, but I wanted to ask you to also bring in Project Esther. I think what's happening in California is the cutting edge of what the mainstream Jewish lobby, AIPAC, ADL, and others have been trying to do nationally, and are getting so much support from the Trump administration because he sees this as a wedge to shut down Harvard University, to shut down the curriculum. And California, sadly, is picking that playbook up in the bills that you're talking about. And this is one case where we in California have a chance to make a direct impact. Sometimes things that are going on in Washington, D.C. seem so remote and we seem almost powerless. So I think it's important to set this in the context of Project Esther that the Heritage Foundation issued as a companion to Project 2025. Do you want to talk about that briefly, Marcy?
Sure, yes. Yes. So Project Esther came from the Heritage Foundation, as Stephen mentioned, the Project 2025 authors. And when you read it, actually, it almost reads like it was written by an AI app or something. But basically, they have a plan to rid the country of the voices for Palestine. And their plan calls for defunding universities, revoking visas, all the things that we're seeing, and using the ad hominem, you are a supporter of the Hamas network, universally. And so Code Pink, Medea Benjamin, lots of people are in the halls of Congress every day confronting lawmakers, and they automatically turn to her and say, you are a supporter of Hamas. And so that's integral to their messaging. And though in California, we're considered a blue state, and Scott Wiener, I don't know if you saw it on that website I showed you, the Legislative Jewish Caucus, they have a statement about how they support immigrants. They are taking a page out of Trump's playbook, out of Project Esther.
Exactly. And, there's probably no epithet in the current conversation that is more reprehensible, more damaging than to call someone an anti-Semite. Calling someone an anti-Semite it triggers all of the emotions that we saw depicted in that misleading video, the last one we just saw, because no one wants to be called an anti-Semite. No Jew wants to be called a self-hating Jew. Marcy is Jewish. Many of you on this screen know that I converted to Judaism. I converted to Judaism because at that time I believed it was a religion based on justice, 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 and had friends growing up that I respected, and I thought it was a safe haven for me as a lapsed Catholic before that. And tragically, and I now expand this beyond myself, those values of justice, justice, justice are being exploited. They are being contorted in the political moment under the Netanyahu administration and Israel's path for 75 years or more. This didn't just start on October 7. So what I've learned from Marcy over the years is that you can deeply oppose anti-Semitism. No one suggests that anti-Semitism doesn't exist. There are presidential advisors who give the Nazi salute. There is a president who recognized both sides at the Charlottesville right-wing demonstrations when white men carrying tiki torches chanted, "Jews will not replace us." Anti-Semitism is real. It needs to be identified and combated. The problem is you cannot then use genuine efforts to combat anti-Semitism to suppress criticism of Netanyahu, criticism of Israel, criticism of Zionism. Zionism is a political movement begun in the 1800s. We had a wonderful speaker here who wrote an entire book on the history of Zionism. Zionism is totally up for debate and criticism. It's been criticized historically by Hannah Arendt and Einstein and others. These are legitimate issues for discussion. They should not be suppressed. And what we're literally in the midst of, and this is why the work that Marcy and CODEPINK and JVP are doing is so important. We have created a myth. It is almost putting Americans to sleep that you are going to combat anti-Semitism by controlling the curriculum of schools, including Harvard and California schools, by then suppressing the history of the Middle East, by banning a discussion of the Nakba and other forms of genocide. And a legislator can walk down the halls of the California legislature ridiculing and demeaning the notion that Israel can be accused of genocide, when now, over a year and a half ago, the International Court of Justice, with an American judge on the 15-member panel, found a plausible case of genocide for what Israel is doing in Gaza, and it's only gotten worse. And the restraining orders that court issued have been ignored by Israel to worsen the genocide, to complete the essence of genocide. So all of that is going on, and yet over here, with a government that is financially supporting the Netanyahu military operation and funding it, spends their time suppressing academic freedom and free speech in colleges and now in California. That is what is so important about this. And it has taken voices like Marcy's to create a small lane to stop the juggernaut for a bill that you've heard described today to have passed the assembly, if I'm correct, with no vote, a few abstentions, rushed through. Did you see how the words of a previously existing bill on the California State Bar? I was reading this bill and I couldn't understand, why are we amending a state bar bill on attorney discipline? All the lines that are crossed out, well, the whole bill is crossed out. It was a placeholder, and Marcy explained this. It was a placeholder bill so that this bill 715 could be attached, could be supplemented, inserted to skip ahead in the legislative process. Why do you need to not have hearings and not afford time for opposition if you are so confident that your bill is wise and useful and necessary? Why do you have to ram it through the legislature without hearings, without carrying over the opposition from 1468, which ICUJP submitted a full written opposition drafted by Rebecca Arvizu on our behalf when we had full-throated opposition to 1468. And I just briefly want to comment that you may have seen the language go by that they list Judaism and Islam and other religions. They're clever. They saw the opposition to 1468. They saw that it appeared to single out Jewish teaching and Judaism. So on the surface, they tried to make it appear universal by naming other religions that should not be discriminated against. But the true essence came out when Marcy mentioned the anti-Semitism coordinator. You know, there's no hate coordinator. There's no Islamophobia coordinator. There's no other coordinator. There's an anti-Semitism coordinator. And that's because that's the true essence of this bill. And once we appoint a bureaucrat, the anti-Semitism coordinator, who can now issue regulations and guidelines and definitions, then this full bill in its full fruition will come to pass. There's no definition of anti-Semitism because that's what they like. In this parallel legislation is going on in the Senate. The Anti-Semitism Awareness Act is pending in the U.S. Senate. It does very much what we're talking about today on a national level. And in that one, Marcy, and I'll make this a conversation, tell us more, Marcy, about the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, so-called definition of anti-Semitism, why it's a problem, and what even its author has said about legislation to codify that definition.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's called the IRA, and it was produced by 35 countries. The definition itself is not problematic in the sense that it describes anti-Semitism as hatred toward Jews. But then part of that package are these 11 examples, 7 of which revolve around Israel. And, denying Israel's right to self-determination, calling it a racist state, saying Israelis are acting like Nazis, all of that is considered anti-Semitic. And there has been a great push to adopt the IRA as federal law for civil rights complaints. In other words, you say Israel's a racist state and a federal civil rights complaint investigation could be launched and you could be found guilty. And I don't know what the ramifications of that are, but if you're an educational institution, probably defunded. If you're a teacher, probably fired. This, however, was blocked basically in the Senate. I have to say, good work, Bernie Sanders. Good work, Rand Paul. Together, they gutted this. What they did, I watched the hearing, it's great theater. Bernie Sanders is running the show, but it is chaired by this guy Cassidy from the South, a Republican, and he's trying to get this through this committee. I don't know why it was in this committee. It was a committee on employment or something. And Bernie Sanders introduces a motion to gut the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which would have officially adopted the IRA as the examples and definition of anti-Semitism, to take out all references to Israel, all 7 of the 11 examples pertaining to Israel from the bill. And the chair then introduces a motion to table this. And Rand Paul votes with Bernie Sanders and the Democrats against tabling it, and then votes for the amendment to gut the bill of all references to Israel, and it passes. And the chair is so befuddled and so mystified, he doesn't know what's going on, and he has to have one of his aides clue him in. So that's where it is right now. But it's very compelling to watch, because Bernie is reading off these proxy votes. I guess, I don't know, Democrats don't have to be there. They can vote. He's got paperwork reading these proxies, and Rand Paul is, yeah, and Chris Murphy is, yeah, this is outrageous. And that's what they did.
So we have a chance to do that here in California. In other words, we have the child of the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act in both of these bills, AB 715 and SB 472. There's been a rush to judgment. These bills will allow the very same kind of definition of anti-Semitism that includes criticism of Israel. This is why the ADL crows that there's an increase in anti-Semitism. When you load up the definition of anti-Semitism with criticism of Israel, you are going to get more, quote, incidents of anti-Semitism. Much of what Harvard is accused of not monitoring and not policing, for which Trump is stripping them of their funding, was not punishing students for expressing pro-Palestinian speech. And very few, you don't hear this kind of analysis on CNN or MSNBC even very much. You certainly don't hear it elsewhere. We are so terrified at being called anti-Semites, but bless his heart, Bernie Sanders doesn't share that fear. He's courageous in this respect. So by jamming this bill through, we have the one chance now in the Senate to block both of these bills. They also have redefined nationality. They're kind of they're learning from the work that Rebecca and the rest of us have done in attacking the previous legislation. So they keep catching up, and they keep plugging holes as they see it. And they've expanded in the term nationality to include religious identity. Then they will call this discrimination, because you are discriminating against Israeli students and against Israel. And they're on the verge of achieving that. And finally, and I'm just really reinforcing things that Marcy said, they're going to create a bureaucracy to go after teachers, to go after school boards, to use the whole disciplinary wing of the Department of Education of the state of California, to mire teachers into these disciplinary proceedings, often to suspend a teacher pending the outcome, because they may have said the word Nakba in an ethnic studies class or in a history class for the Middle East. And they're doing all of this with tremendous expense. Marcy alluded to the extra costs of all of this at a time when the state is facing a $12 billion deficit. So I'm inviting Marcy to add any other comments before we open this up for full Q&A.
Sure. Thank you so much for all that background and analysis, Stephen. I would ask that this organization commend you. Thank you for sending that letter of opposition to AB 1468, that you also submit as soon as it's possible, and it should be possible in the next day or two, to submit a letter of opposition to AB 715 to the Senate Education Committee. And after they meet, if they pass it, to the Senate Appropriations Committee, and that all of you contact your state representatives. If you don't know who they are, you can just Google, find my California representatives, put in your address, and they'll tell you who your state representatives. Sometimes there's confusion between state and federal, so it's good to know. And tell them how you feel about this bill and what you want to see happen, and ask for a meeting, and that you need to educate and advocate for real equity. Yes.
Marcy, you were very clear on where SB 715 stands. It passed the Assembly. It's moving to the Senate. AB 715. Tell us the status of SB 472, the Holocaust and Genocide Education Bill.
Okay, so that.
And I know you had some of that legislative stuff up on the screen. That's a SB, so that started in the Senate.
Yeah. It'll take me a minute here.
All right. While you're doing that, I wanted to show my respect for Rebecca Arvizu, who did so much of the legwork in drafting our opposition. Rebecca, could you take a few minutes to highlight the issues?
I'll just before Rebecca speaks, I'll just say I'm looking at it again. Now it makes sense to me. What happened was it passed SB 472, that Holocaust bill passed out of the Senate Appropriations Committee, but it had to be amended, and it will have to be re-referred to the Committee on Appropriations. So they're going to have to meet again. So that's where it is, for the Appropriations Committee.
All right. So there's several openings there at the Senate level, and then it still would have to go to the Assembly. Rebecca, give us a general outline of why and how ICUJP has already spoken up on these issues in connection with 1468. You're on mute.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Well, last year we did file an opposition to, I think it was SB 1287, the Don't Say Genocide bill that was watered down.
SB 1277, maybe?
Yeah, or 87. I think 1277 was a Holocaust bill. And then there was another bill that
I know,
that students couldn't say genocide. They couldn't have protests. Essentially, they were trying to shut down protests. Okay, that bill got significantly watered down. It was opposition from us and a lot of other groups, including CODEPINK, Jewish Voice for Peace. And so it boiled down to the bill passed with just that universities and colleges in California can now essentially demand a loyalty oath from students who are enrolling in schools to say that they will not engage in illegal protests on campuses. So we were glad that the prohibition on free speech was eventually taken out. But we learned a lot about the Jewish caucus. And they had sent a letter to the governor in January of 2024, last year, complaining about the diversity caucuses not supporting them after October 7th. And in that letter, they complained about ethnic studies too, that they had supported ethnic studies, but that now these diversity caucus were not supporting them in the wake of October 7th and all the anti-Semitic attacks that they were getting. And California teachers who teach learning ethnic studies as being bigots, because we had as speakers in February of last year, Teresa Montano and Lupe Cardoza, who had been sued by the Zionist teachers. And we heard their harrowing stories about being, death threats against them from Zionist parents for teaching ethnic studies, and eventually that case was thrown out. But it triggered me because my state representative, Jackie Irwin, signed that letter. She is a member of the Jewish caucus. Now, what you should know, maybe you could speak more to this, Marcy, is that the Jewish caucus, it's funny because there's a big debate in CODEPINK. What do we call it? They're not Jewish. They're not representing Jewish values. Let's call them the Zionist caucus. I decided, let's call them the Ethnic Cleansing Caucus, because to me, what they seem bent on doing is cleaning all references of Palestinians from California school curriculums. That's their big agenda this year. And but not all of them are Jewish. And that's interesting fact to me, is like, why would you be on a Jewish caucus and you're not Jewish? And then so maybe you can talk to that, or you've had some thoughts about that.
Sure.
It kind of bothered. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, before I forget, do you have the evidence? Do you have that letter that they sent to the governor?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
can
could put a
you
link.
send that to me? Has that been written
Yeah.
about? Because I don't, has anybody written about that?
We included it in our opposition last year, and we, as far as, trying to illustrate the intent.
Oh, I'd love to see that letter. Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And then
was that secured through a Public Records Act request, or how did you get that letter?
No, they said where I got it from, because I'm linked to Henry Stern. I've done a lot of work with Henry Stern, animal welfare. I've had in-person talks with him. I'll donate to his campaign. I mean, I could go on. That's a whole nother, story. I can kind of see where he's coming from, because he went through a lot of problems with his father-in-law, who was a Holocaust survivor, but I'll save that for another time. But I wanted to make one more point about the Jewish caucus too. Is not all Jewish,
right?
Not all Jewish members of the legislature sign on to what they're doing. Like Matt Haney didn't sign on to the letter that they sent to the governor last year. But yeah, so we've had our eye on them this year.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that letter. Very interesting. So yeah, they're not all Jewish. Most of them are. Rick Zber, who's introducing this bill, AB 715, he's not Jewish, but he represents an area, a constituency of a lot of Jews. And he's basically taking the place of Richard Bloom, who spearheaded the anti-BDS legislation in California that activists fought for a year and watered down considerably. This was about 8 years ago or so. They wanted to establish an attorney general's list of Israel boycotters and deny state contracts of $10,000 or more to anyone, any business not boycotting, but just not operating for whatever reason in Israel. And yeah, now I think the bar is $100,000, but I'm going to submit a Public Records Act request to find out what actually happened with all of that. But in the meantime, so Rick Zber is not Jewish, and these Rubio sisters who are out in east of Los Angeles, they are not Jewish, but they said that they have a relative who's Jewish. And so therefore, they're corporate Democrats.
So let's open this up, because we've got about 20 minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marcy. This has been very informative. I know when we first started setting this up that you had a script for people to call about AB 715. Is that something that you have that I can put in a link? I can put the script in, but it's like 3,000 words, and you can only put 1,000 words or 1,000 letters at a time in the chat.
JPAC Action should, in the next day or two, have a one-click action alert. Would that work?
Yes, I can put that in the YouTube video.
Wait a day or so. I can send that to you. I think
that'd be great. Yeah, when we do the YouTube video, I can put that in a link on the video as well, or in the description. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I have 3 friends that I've worked with on any number of social justice issues. One is an interfaith chaplain, one is a rabbi, and one is the president of the Pomona Unified School Board, all of whom identify as Jews. And something I don't have in common with them is this. I watch Democracy Now! Every morning, and Amy has been relentless in covering what's being done to Gaza. I've read quite a bit of stuff, including a book by Rashid Khalidi, Columbia professor, a book entitled The 100 Years' War on Palestine. He also wrote a book on the Jewish identity, which I haven't read, but I look forward to reading. Okay, with that said, I have been deeply concerned about the genocide and about the apartheid, who's so directly linked to the genocide. And so, as I try to articulate my concerns with these three friends I just mentioned to you in various conversations, the basic response I get is, and here I stand as the ultimate older male WASP, okay, is there's no way you can understand. You simply cannot understand how deep it is in us to need to circle the wagons when we are threatened, based upon our history. And I can talk forever about how this is a war of attrition that could drag the whole world down ultimately. Doesn't matter. There's no way, Dick, you can understand. And I have this deep frustration. It's almost like the race card is being played against those who take my position and people who look like me who take my position. I need some advice.
Well,
I feel pushed into a corner I can't get out of. And what does the Dick Bunces of the world do with that?
my short answer would be move on to someone else because these people are entrenched. And what's the likelihood of changing their minds after a lifetime of indoctrination and now they're wedded to this position? It doesn't mean that they will never change, but I don't know if it's worth your valuable time when there are a lot of people who don't quite understand what's going on and can be reached. When I had a conversation, I was out there, I fasted for Gaza. I'm in Santa Barbara. I was on a street corner with, 6 others, signs, walking crosswalks. And a woman on a bike came by and she said, just got to rip off the Band-Aid, kill them all, And I said to her, how do you think that's going to work out for the Jews? How do you think that's going to work out when the world hates us? Or when, people blame us for another Holocaust? And she said, she couldn't even hear me. And I kind of feel that way about people. I have friends I've grown up with. I was raised in a very Zionist community. Most of them I don't talk to anymore. Some of them I do. And they're of the mind that, well, Netanyahu's horrible. I hate seeing this, but he's the problem. I'm like, no, he's not the problem. He is the end result of an ethnic cleansing that's been going on for 76 years. You know what? I was a Zionist earlier, and I've changed my mind. So it's possible, but it took a long time, unfortunately. And
Dick,
so we don't have a lot of time right now.
Dick, I'm going to add to Marcy's answer because I'm so grateful to the way you framed this. I do think, and you're a perfect person to be the spokesperson for this because you're patient, you're understanding. I think you need to find a calm setting to sit down with such a person. I think you have to exhibit the humility that I know you feel, that you don't presume to tell them what to believe. You don't presume to be in their shoes or to understand what they or the people they are speaking for have gone through. What you can bring to the conversation is your understanding of human rights and even of Judaism and its teachings. I put in the chat already 2 articles that I've written on this, and I can separately share them with you if you have trouble grabbing what's in the chat. One is We Can Fight Anti-Semitism Without Destroying Free Speech. Of all places, the Jewish News published that op-ed by me because of the way I framed it, and I was trying to exhibit the rhetoric and the behavior that I'm encouraging you to consider. And there's another article because of the lawsuit that Rebecca mentioned, where a federal judge denied Jewish parents a lawsuit attempting to alter the curriculum of the unified school district to obliterate Palestinian voices. So a federal judge has already weighed in on this. But the third article, which I haven't had time to put in the chat, and I can share it or send it, quotes Simon Wiesenthal. Now, there's the Simon Wiesenthal Center. I've lectured there on the question of free speech. But the Simon Wiesenthal Center put out its top 10 examples of anti-Semitism last year. And most of them were criticisms of Israel. It was exactly the flawed analysis that Marcy outlined. And I took each one of those top 10s and explained why they were not examples of virulent Jew hatred and anti-Semitism. They were criticisms of Israel. But I began that article by quoting Simon Wiesenthal himself and regretting that the center named after him has failed to recognize the lessons that their namesake has expressed. He said, "For your benefit, learn from our tragedy. It is not a written law that the next victims must be Jews. It can also be other people. We saw it begin in Germany with Jews, but people from more than 20 other nations were also murdered. When I started this work, I said to myself, I will look for the murderers of all the victims, not only the Jewish victims. I will fight for justice." That is an authority, Dick, you could cite that is unblemished among your Jewish friends as an authority who understands that sadly every people and every government on the face of this earth, including, I'll quickly say, the United States of America, can engage in genocide, and certainly Israel has and is capable of that. And that it is no answer for your Jewish friends to say, you don't understand. When they say that, they are silencing you. They are eliminating you from the conversation. That is not fair. That is not justice, which the Torah speaks of.
Wow, that's very helpful.
I would also, one other thought, and then I know Rebecca has her hand up, is that, if they believe in the 10 Commandments, the second commandment says, we won't worship idols. We won't worship, we have a relationship with God, not with any other physical, with a physical representation. And that means we should not be worshiping a nation state.
Yeah, right. Perfect.
Well, thank you. Rebecca, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Marcy, for coming to talk on this. Really, it's a huge subject. What I see the biggest challenge right now with AB 715 and the way it got, it was essentially revived after AB 1468 died. I have worked on bills where we've done this, tried to, backdoor, what I call backdoor in bills on, to get past the rules on when you're supposed to file your bills. But they've always died. In this case, I was really surprised that they were actually able to revive it and move it forward and get the full assembly vote. And I see that because of the support they got this time from the diversity caucuses. I think that was the key here. And what it's really bothering me, and based on what you said, that certain members of the Jewish caucus are also part of they're chairing the budget, they're chairing the budget committee. And I can't help thinking about this anti-Semitic trope, we have about how the Jews control the money. I know I'm going into really sensitive territory here, but I want to
What
bring this
happens
up
when
for
it's
a
true?
discussion. But it just frustrates me. Is this intentional that they are leveraging that type of anti-Semitism to get the support from the diversity caucuses that they didn't have before here? And and it makes it easier to go back to the diversity caucus members to go back to their constituents and say, oh, we have to support our Jewish brothers and sisters here. But it's like a threat. It's like a threat. It's a fear that their bills are going to die if they don't support AB 715. And I noticed that Isaac Bryan did not sign on for the Black Caucus, even though he chairs the Black Caucus. He had his co-chair sign up, and he wasn't present for the vote here. Now, I remember last year when Isaac Bryan took a beating in Leimert Park for not passing reparations. And he promised then and there he was going to get it passed this year. He was going to get a reparations bill passed this year. So I can see why he's pulling back on that. But how can we get the other caucuses?
I know.
To
I just
see
want
the
to add
light?
that one. It's so interesting what you're saying. One note about Isaac Bryan was before this bill was gutted, amended, there was a letter circulating from the Legislative Jewish Caucus and also signed by these diversity caucus chairs, others, saying that they were going to work on legislation. And the word was that Isaac Bryan was going to be the author, the co-author. And so all of us rallied, and his constituents called him out online and so forth. And the next thing we knew, he was not a co-author. And he told, or his staffer told somebody that he was going to co-author, but he wasn't. He wasn't.
Yeah. I sent that to Melina Abdullah, and I could just imagine the conversations between because she's an educator too. On this, but yeah, how do we convince those diversity caucus leaders you are actually enforcing an anti-Semitic trope by supporting this? If you're worried about your bills and they're heading budget committee.
These diversity caucus chairs, one of them is Lena Gonzalez. She's the Latino caucus chair, and she's from Long Beach. And some of her constituents, well, we met with her staffers, and we'll meet again. And, people need to be calling them. The other one is Akila Pearson Weber. She's head of the Black Caucus, and she's in the San Diego area. And Mike Fong of Alhambra, he's of the AAPI caucus, the chair, and they've had a protest in front of his office. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they're in a very tight spot right now, but not tight enough to withdraw their support.
Peaceful collaboration, solidarity. That's what I've been thinking about. That's what coming to mind. And the more information we have, the more information we can give to each other. And when we come together, like groups like this, we can speak about solution and a healing and think about ways of combating the hate. And I think that it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of time, but it also takes everyone coming together with the resources that we have and putting it for good and knowing that it's purposeful and it's intentional both. So I want to thank you for your work, and I just look forward to our progress and us doing good together.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Words of wisdom and insight. Yes, and after the word, hopefully we can all give Senator Perez's office a call and tell, because it's in her court right now. She's chair of the Senate Education Committee. She could refuse to hear this bill, which is what happened last year when the Legislative Jewish Caucus tried to introduce an anti-ethnic studies bill. The chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, I believe it was the Appropriations, that was Caballero, Ana Caballero, the Fresno area. She told the authors, we're not going to hear your bill. They withdrew their bill. So she has the power to do that. Now, whether she will it's really up to us. I will just add that she's also running for state superintendent of instruction against Elmer Tsuchi.
Carol Francis, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Marcy, would you make sure that in your the script that we get her name and contact information's in it so we can call her? Richard, I just want to one of Marcy's response to you about what to say to these people, it was the effect on Jewish people and anti-Semitism. Obviously, as she was saying, if you equate a genocidal act with the Jewish people, you're going to increase anti-Semitism. But the other thing is, I would say to somebody who said to me, you cannot understand, I would say, you cannot understand what it's like for Palestinian people seeing their mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and sons and daughters killed. You cannot understand because you're lost in your little world.
Thank you so much. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up for today. Thank you, Marcy, for a wonderful presentation. That was very enlightening.
Thank you. I know it's a lot. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate, being with all of you because you're all so committed and have years of experience and so much insight. And it is true what Jasmine said. I mean, this is a matter of pooling our resources and really working together. And in that spirit, I will be sending you, Rick, information to share with everybody. And thank you for hosting me.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to continue, Don, if you will, we're going to continue to make this a priority for ICUJP. You have a full partner in us. This takes no further board meetings or board resolutions. This is in our DNA. We're going to up our game to organize the kind of lobbying that you're talking about. We'll do our part in a revised letter along the lines that Rebecca has discussed and we've done today. I think we have a second argument in our quiver, which is a rush to judgment. Whatever you may think about the underlying issues, no bill, no law should pass with this kind of rush. I think that will grab the attention of others who blindly supported this. But we stand with you on this. I think I've already made you a card-carrying member of ICUJP. Your lifetime membership is fully paid. We urge you to join us any Friday morning that you're able to do so. And offline, there are lots of resources in the chat. Dick Bunce, I was able to put in a link to the Simon Wiesenthal article in the chat for you and others to take a look at. But on this one, this is roll up our sleeves, do the heavy lifting that legislative work takes. I'm proud of ICUJP. For 24 years, we've been able to both be in the streets, demonstrate, engage in civil disobedience, but also be in the halls of the legislature and Congress to lobby, to meet with legislators, to exercise the authority that interfaith work has. So, Marcy, you know you have a full partner in this.
Well, thank you very much. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put in the phone numbers and a script that you can use right away. So you don't have to wait for people's Voice for Peace. You can use this.
So that'll be in the chat. Rick, you'll save and grab that. We'll do a post. This recording will be made available publicly and posted on our website. You can push it out separately, Marcy and others, and it will have resources linked in it as well.
Here we go. Okay, and then also send the one click. And with that, I thank you.
And everybody, come back this same station, the same time next week, and let's listen about Don's trip to Syria and the Middle East. I think it's going to be fascinating. I hope you could share some photographs or videos, whatever you're able to pull together in the next week.
Yeah.